心して飲
おい、仕事しろ。
める。もうダメ。オリデイズ冒険者ギルドへようこそ。本日のクエストはこちら。他のギルドに入ったら許さないからにゃ。
猫？今日の仕事はこれだ。
バレなきゃいいんだよね。このクエストを受けたいんだけど。ノーノーノー、ソーリー。今日
Hello. Can you guys hear me? Is the stream working? Let me know if it's working okay now. Okay, I think we're back online. Okay, sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there in the settings. That never happened before. But yeah, I think OBS died. So I tried reconnecting the stream. But hello, thanks for joining. Konbanwa. Awesome, we're back. Yeah, let me know how the audio is, if it's too loud or too quiet, and I'll try to fix that up as well. And I'll be looking at the chat. And thanks for joining today. Today we're gonna be talking about, well, I'll be sharing with you I guess you can call it art process for 2026. It's been quite a while actually since I've shared how I draw. I think it's a few years ago maybe. I made a video about it, but it's been ages, so thought it'd be fun to see what it's like. And hold on, I think I'm way too high on the screen. Ira, can you just squat down a bit? Awesome. Okay. And so, let's see. What we have up today is, first, I'll show you, I have this, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but I drew this nice illustration. This Sanrio commissioned me to draw this illustration of their Virtual Puroland, which is their newly opened virtual theme park. And yeah, it's gonna be fun to share how I made it. And yeah, hope you guys learn something, and we'll get to actually check it out, what it looks like inside their theme park. All right, so yep, audio seems to be looking okay. Thanks for letting me know. The treehouse looks like it's smiling. Yeah, awesome. Alrighty, let's see. So first of all, how I draw my illustrations goes through about roughly 3 stages. I go through ideation, rough, and then render. And in this stream, what I'll go through is the rough steps I go for each step. So starting with ideation, and we'll also, of course, go through the rough and render. Okay. So let me just check everything in line. Okay. Yep, and I think it's working all right, so I can start. So with the ideation, I tend to start off with the kind of like these blobs, if you can call it. Technically, so most of the time, I start with thumbnail sketches. So what a thumbnail sketch is like a small sketch you do in a square box. Now, oftentimes I will do it with a drawing rather than like a blob of silhouettes. I don't know how to better explain it. Maybe there's a better word to explain it. But so most of the time, for most of you watching this, you probably won't start off with a blob like this unless you somewhat like to. But what this is useful for is because this illustration that I was going to draw was going to be quite complex. There's like backgrounds, multiple characters. It's like very composition heavy, right? Yeah, so that's the word. When you have something this complex, you usually want to start out with planning the overall silhouette and how the composition is going to come together. But if you're just going to draw a character illustration, like one character, which is I think most of the people watching the stream, what you'll need is more just straight up the sketch. So like it matters less to do this kind of composition mockup, and you can kind of go straight into doing kind of like these sketches, but I'll take you through it. So first of all, with this one, I came up with these for my first ideation step. I started thinking about, what is the composition gonna look like? What is the overall, how should I say? What is important? What am I going to be showing in this illustration? So because this is a commission, there's Sanrio, the client, who asked me to draw their Tree of Wisdom in their Virtual Puroland. And so I had to make sure that this idea was going to be portrayed correctly, portrayed well in the illustration. And also they wanted me and Ira to be visiting that place. So, but when you're drawing with yourself and you're not doing commission, I guess what you're thinking of is the spark or that idea you have in your head. You know, when the thing's like, oh, I kind of want to draw this. Or maybe you have this, oh, that's a nice pose. I want to start with that. So that's still okay. This is just in the case you're doing a commission where, yeah, the core essence of the piece. That's absolutely correct. You want to make sure you capture the core essence of the piece that your client wants you to do. But in the case you're drawing for yourself, that core can be whatever spark, whatever inspires you to want to draw. And again, as I said, because it's quite composition heavy and there's a background, I first started off with just doing these rough composition blobs, silhouettes. It's like just trying to capture how the elements would be positioned and packaged in the scene. And for this one, I like to use 3 levels of darkness. So as you can see here, what I have is dark, medium, and light. And I tend to like white if I'm going to be showing the sky. So with the characters, the darkest is the foreground, and then medium for the midground, and then the background goes lighter, and if there's a sky, I like to use white. And that helps me to really think of what the scene will look like. Now, with this is typically something you don't show to other people, like because non-artists will get it. I wonder if you guys in chat will understand what's happening in these scenes, but this is more like artists who, this is like, I guess another artist might understand this, but not necessarily non-artist people, because they're like, what are these blobs, Ori? Why are you showing me these blobs? But you guys are artists, right? So I'm guessing, or I'm hoping you guys would understand what these are. And so these would be like the character, and then the smaller character, and then midground tree, and then the sky. And so on like that. So this one's kind of like low view, mid view, like kind of like just a bit from below eye level. This one is vertical, this one's looking from above, this one's looking from above. And once I've done this, what I like to do is I like to choose my favorite ones. So once I've kind of like thought up, ideated, I was gonna say vomit out my ideas, but that's not a nice term. Just vomit out your ideas. But yeah, after I've finished putting down the spark of inspiration, yep, that sounds much better. I like to choose which ones. So in this case, I ended up with these 2. And I chose them because I wanted to have one horizontal composition to work with and one vertical composition. Now, usually, if you're doing commission, your client will kind of tell you what aspect ratio, whether it's to be vertical, horizontal, you know, what size. But in this case, Sanrio was okay with me doing whatever. They kind of left it up to me in terms of like the composition and all that. So I wanted to give them a choice for one vertical and one horizontal. And once that's sorted out, it's then time to polish up the thumbnail sketch. So it's really, as you can see here, it's just taking into the silhouette, overall silhouette, and trying to capture that down into the sketch. Like so. And so, when you're doing the sketch, first of all, I want you to know that when you're doing these thumbnail sketches, usually I do them really small, like about this size when I'm drawing. And again, the main point of the thumbnail sketch is to capture the idea. And more so, working from the silhouettes, you're then trying to make it a bit more concrete, the details. Because if you leave it as a silhouette, this, again, like no one understands this. You can't show this to anyone, and it's not good to start an art piece with just this. So then, in the thumbnail sketch, I guess you're trying to figure out the rough pose, bit more of the concrete details, but not too much, because the rough is more of the work or what the rough is meant to do. And so, it shouldn't be this detailed, I would say. The only reason this is more detailed, that I've done it more detailed, is because I was going to show this, and I was going to show this to the client and let them choose which one they want. So I wanted to brush it up and make it nice so they have a good idea of which one to choose. But if I was just drawing for myself, or if the client, if I wasn't going to show multiple ideas to the client, then I just leave it kind of rough, and then I'd worry about the details in the rough stage. But yeah, if you're going to show this to someone, then you kind of want to brush it up a bit. So that's why the thumbnail sketch is a lot more detailed than how I would do it usually. But for most of you watching this, you probably want to keep it looser, because I think most of you guys watching this are drawing for yourself, unless you're also like doing commissions as an artist. In that case, yeah, then that's a consideration. Remember this kind of thing in art class? Yeah, thumbnail sketches are really useful. Yeah, don't wing it. One of the biggest mistakes when I was doing early on is just like, oh, I'll just draw straight on. Like, I don't know, I'll just draw straight away and not planning. But the reason you want to plan out before you draw is that it's easier to make any changes you want to do in this planning stage, rather than when you've got everything rendered. Because if you needed, if you, or maybe your client, especially if you're working with a client, right? They might ask you, hey, can you move, can you change this a little? Can you do this? If they have any changes that they want, then it's easier to just draw the sketch and kind of like put this grayscale kind of shadows in. But if you've already have it all rendered and you need to change something, oh god, absolute nightmare. Because you have to re-render everything. If things are overlapping, it's gonna take ages. So plan out your drawings before you commit to them. This matters for any kind of art, actually. I was gonna say this matters more for illustration and like color, but even if you're doing like just a sketch or manga panel, if you guys are manga artists, then you still kind of want to plan it out, because even in the line art stage, it's a pain to fix that, whereas a sketch is loose and it's faster to fix. So yeah. Okay, so once I had the thumbnail sketch ready, I went and gave this to Sanrio to pick, and they decided to go with, they said they liked both, but in the end they decided to go with the horizontal composition. And so I went and made the rough for that. So the rough is really where your art is starting to be figured out. So you're like figuring out more of the details, the pose, and also the color in the rough stage. So I have the rough and the color rough stage. And the first step is to figure out the pose. Especially if you're a character artist, you want, and actually anime art, most of anime art is about characters. So you do want to figure that out. And so I start off with, as you can see here, so we'll just compare with the ideation process here. This one is still very loose. As you can see, it's like just capturing the idea, and the pose isn't as detailed. It's not as fleshed out or figured out. And here is where I start to really figure out the details, like the exact background, how the hair is gonna flow, the clothes, and especially the pose, the character. So I like to do a rough sketch after working on from the thumbnail sketch. And so this is much bigger, and this is where where I start to figure out the details. The chat bubble is cute. Yeah, I'm glad you noticed that. I got this newly made. It's been a while since I streamed, but in the last time since I streamed and today, I had this newly made for the channel. So it's a nice guild themed chat bubble. Okay. So once you have once I have the rough sketch done, I then work out the overall colors. So putting in the base colors, the overall lighting. In here, I focus more on the character lighting because I'm a character artist, so I have my focus more on the character. But for background artists, they might have a lot of focus on the background. And this one's like, I do it in steps. So as you can see here, at first, this is basically what I'd consider a color rough. But if you're going to show a client, maybe you wanna like brush it up a bit more and take it to more of this, more of a rendered with all the details. And this is just a personal touch, but what I do is that I tend to like to figure out most of the background details in the color rough. I don't know if that's just me. Technically, ideally, the best way to approach doing your rough is that you want to have your characters and your backgrounds go hand in hand in terms of the render. So like you don't want to like fully render the characters and then leave the background like super loose, or fully render the background and leave the character super loose. Technically, you want to bring them up, so it's like render, work on the character and then work on the background a bit, work on the character, work on the background a bit. That way, everything remains balanced. But for some reason, I found it easier when I figure out more of the background during the color off stage. So I would say like the character here is like more loose than the background, but that's just a personal preference. Yeah, maybe it's because I tend to, maybe it's because I feel like it creates more of the composition for me. Yeah, but maybe I'll have to think about that a little more, why I like to do that. I've never really thought about it. It's just like one of those things where, I like to do it this way. Yeah. Are there other profile pictures for the chat bubbles? Yeah, there's actually other pictures. There's one for members, which there's no membership on this channel. So if there's ever memberships on the channel, you'll see an evolved slime. You'll become an evolved slime. But we don't even have membership. So actually, yeah. And also, I have a different chat bubble. I'll post it here. You can see mine. Okay, so taking from there, and one point I like to share here is that when you're doing, I guess even if you're doing a character illustration, but especially if you have like a background illustration, what you want to do is you want to have, just like how in the silhouettes, I had divided it up into the dark, medium, light for foreground, midground, background. It's also a good principle to have those three levels because it helps create that sense of depth. So foreground is like this structure, this ruins, the character and some of these leaves, and then in the midground is like the tree and the back ruins, and then in the background is like these pillars, these trees, and of course the sky. Yeah. Is the stream lagging again? Just let me know, and I'll see. Sorry about that. It's really weird. I've never had this problem before. I don't know if it's just my internet, but yeah, if it's lagging for everyone, then I'll try to fix it. Yeah. The darker, so actually this is like an easy way to do compositions. Dark, you just think dark, medium, light. And the darker it is, the closer it is to the camera. And the reason for that is, so let me just bring up the full render. I'll go through the other process, but I thought this would be good to share here. So the reason you want to do that is that how normal light works, in like normal lighting like this, where you kind of have like the sky and all that, there's a thing called atmospheric perspective. So I don't know, have you guys ever gone hiking or like gone up a mountain or like a really tall place and you see out to the horizon and like the cityscape, right? And have you noticed like the buildings become more blue or like white and it's like lighter and like more fade? Like, let me know if you've ever experienced that. Because that's exactly what atmospheric perspective is. And so what's actually happening there in real life is that the air, there's more air like kind of like stacking up in your vision as you're seeing. So if you're seeing really close by, there's just like a thin, let's imagine there's like a really thin wall of air. Like on your layer, it's like opacity 0.0001%, right? But then as you can see further in the distance, you have a clear vision and more of that air layer stacks up and becomes more opaque. So it starts to stack up to like 1%, 10%, 20%. And it becomes, so what you see starts to take on more of the air, or rather the environment light and color of the atmosphere. So you can think of it as getting more white. And if the environment light is blue, like in this illustration, since it's like the sky, then it also becomes more cool. And so you can kind of bring that principle into your illustration, because in the end, when we're drawing, we're making an illusion from reality, right? And so we can use that trick and we can push things back in the distance by making it more of like the background, well, more lighter first because of the aerial perspective or the atmospheric perspective happening that we just talked about, and also a bit more of the environment light here, which is cool. So it's like kind of seeing the air. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. So when you're seeing out far in the distance of like the cityscapes, it becomes like lighter and cooler if the environment light is blue again. Now, this doesn't happen all the time, because if you're like in an indoors, like let's say in an indoor scene, right? Then obviously, first of all, there's probably, you can't see that far, but maybe you have like a spotlight at the very front. In that case, the foreground might not be the darkest. So there are of course exceptions, and you do kind of have to think what's happening with the lighting. But in many, many cases of natural lighting, you can think of it as foreground, medium, background, dark, light, and then lighter. Like light, dark at the front, and then it goes lighter towards the back. So, so is blue sky mean more bluish background? Yeah, the blue sky. So if you think of it in this scene, the light is that there's like natural sunlight coming from above here, and then the environment light is basically coming from the blue dome of the sky. So the environment light is blue. Yeah, this is like an application of the fundamentals of lighting. So when you're doing art, fundamentals is super important because you can apply it like this. Okay, back to the process. Once I've got the color up here, rendered, it's time to start the render process. And of course, with characters, with anime art, not all anime style arts use line art, by the way, but I do. My style does use it. But yeah, some styles don't. So this will depend on your style. But for me, I like to use, I like to add line art. It's quite typical of anime art. And one thing I wanted to share is that recently I've been loving to use vector layers. So vector layers is it's a layer type in Clip Studio. And I think a lot of other drawing apps also have it. So let's see if I can draw here. I think a lot of drawing apps also have it now, but you might want to check. But I use Clip Studio, this is that. And what you can do is you can create a new vector layer, like here, new vector layer. And then what happens is when you draw it, hold on, there's something wrong with my shortcuts. Give me 1 second. I shortcuts died. Okay, I think my shortcut's working again. There you go, it's working. So what happens with vector layers is that it lets you, so let's say I have like a line like this, and then I add like another line like this, and let's say I want to erase this line. A vector layer can let you erase that really quickly because you can erase up to intersections. So it's so useful for like doing line art. And you can also like adjust the width and length. Sorry, not the, oh yeah, you can even adjust the length actually. So you can select the lines individually with vector layers. So like here, you can kind of like move it around, select it bigger. You can make it thinner and thicker. So this is so good for line art. Like I highly recommend if you use line art for your art style, like try using vector layers. It's so useful. Like I wish I started using it earlier. Like recently I've been using it. It's like, oh my god, this is so good. Okay, but anyway, vector layers, highly recommend for line art. Absolutely use it. Yeah, you can do that. It's like really good. Yeah, so yeah, if you just use normal layer, it's also like if you need to adjust it, right? So let's say you draw a line here, oh, and you're like, oh, this is too small. If you make it bigger, it'll become blurry. But if it's a vector layer, it's absolutely scalable. So let's say you need to make it bigger. You can make it as big as you need to, and it won't become blurry. What's the point of doing character design first? It lets you plan it out. Some artists kind of do design as they draw, but you want to separate out steps as much as possible when you're still learning, because you want your brain to have less things to juggle in your head. So like if you're like, okay, now we're focusing on design brain, let's focus all on design, and you do that. Then now let's focus all on pose, and you do that. It'll be easier to draw. Whereas if you're trying to juggle everything, let's design and pose and color at the same time, your brain's gonna explode. Unless you're used to it. So people who are more experienced and further along in the art journey, their brain's kind of like big bicep brain, right? The brain has done a lot of reps, they've lifted many times, and the brain's like, this is easy, I can do it all at once. But when you're starting on earlier, you're like, your brain's like, hold on, that's too much. So you want to make your brain do as little as possible when you're learning, and maybe you can start to stack up and do multiple things at once as you improve. Okay. Moving on. So once I have the line art, I then add in the base colors for the characters. And I also like to render the eyes early on, because it adds life to the character. It makes me more excited to work on the piece. It's like increases my motivation, because it feels like, you know, when you don't have the eyes rendered, it feels like they're not alive yet. They're like hollow eyes. So I just like it. But depends. Sometimes I just do the first shadows first, which is like the overall lighting statement. So sometimes I have like the overall lighting statement first, like here. Or rather, I bring in from here, from the rough. So that's like the first shadows where I'm like figuring out the overall lighting statement. But sometimes I just like to do eyes render as well, early on. But it kind of depends what I'm feeling. So with my process, I have like a general workflow, which is what I'm showing you here. But sometimes, depending on what I'm feeling like, they get moved around a little. So sometimes I'll do like the overall lighting statement first, what's in light, what's in shadow, and then sometimes I'll do like the eye renders. Yeah, you can tell a lot. You can tell a lot about an artist's style by their eyes. It's very defining, because the eyes is like a big focal point. Because I think with the character illustration, we look at the eyes straight away, right? So it's like, rather we look at the face straight away, and the eyes in particular. So the eyes art style is very telling. I tend to have a lot of details in the eyes. You can zoom in. I tend to have a lot of details, but depending on your art style, you may have less or even more details. I do the line art I do the line art after the color off. So the line art stage for me is after this, after the color off, and I figured out everything. Yeah, that's actually a good point. So how do I know when it's time to move on to start to render? I start to move on to the render stage once I'm kind of satisfied with like, okay, this is the blueprint, this is how the illustration is gonna look like. I've got a clear view of what's gonna happen. You know, overall big decisions are made, like the pose, the composition, the overall colors, and yeah, I'm quite confident and quite happy with how it's gonna turn out. So this is like almost like a preview of your final, right? In your color rough stage, you want to make sure the big decisions are made. Like you absolutely do not want to change the pose or like something major, like, you know, the pose or like the composition once you've rendered it. Like this would be a nightmare if I had to change the pose here, because you basically have to redraw everything. The eyes I draw are cute. Thank you. Yeah, I go for a cute art style as well. So depends. Okay, so after that, with the base colors done, I start to put in the shadows. There's already a video on my channel about like the 1, 2, 3 shadows. So, but overall, it's like, you know, I still follow roughly the same process, though I think some of the details might have been different because I do a mix of multiply and normal layers, but the main principle always stays the same. So first shadow is what separates light and shadow, and then second shadows is darker than the first shadows. Usually I do it for like cast shadows like these. And then third shadows is like for really dark shadows, like where it's hard for light to get in there. So like in between the hair, like here in the armpits, or like the hands here as well. So wherever it's like hard for light to get in there, I like to add in third shadows. And you really need those dark, and I like to add those dark shadows because it helps ground the piece. And then I'll add like the 1.5 shadows, which is more of the details and the nuances of the lighting. Okay, and with the character rendered, then I render in the backgrounds. So again, it's mainly adding just light and shadow and the textures to the background. So backgrounds and characters still follow the same principles of lighting, which is that you can still use the 1, 2, 3 shadows with the backgrounds, but my backgrounds tend to be, it depends, I guess. If you have like backgrounds, so for example, something in the front here, like this foreground ruin, I add more details because it's really close. So as you can see, there's like highlights, and then there's like really dark shadows, like, you know, there's probably like 1, 2, 3 shadows here. But with the really back, like as you can see, like things really far away, this is so simple. It's just like light, shadow. So the amount of detail you want to also control, because if everything is about the same level of detail, then everything will look flat. So let's see. If everything is highly detailed and rendered, then everything is kind of flat because there's no difference, right? If the background is as detailed as the character, then the person looking at it, the viewer, right, won't know what's important in your piece. This is like the essence of contrast, right? It's, you know, what's more important and what's less important. My characters will have more importance because that's an important focal point in the scene. And also this building, because it's a tree of wisdom, it's one of the main core ideas I'm trying to share in the piece. So details, it'll have also a lot of details, but the rest, I don't want it to compete with it. Like, especially like this back building, I don't want it to be competing with the character or anything. Or like these back trees, I don't want it to compete with everything else, because I want to make sure like what's important stays important. Psychology sensei. Hello. And yeah. So, oh yeah, and I guess the difference is that backgrounds will have more textures. So with characters, it's roughly 1, 2, 3 shadows and like highlights, reflected lights. And reflected lights is the thing coming from the background. And highlights are of course things like the hair here, and like the place being hit by light a lot. And also maybe some of the rim lights, like here, rim lights. But with the backgrounds, it's like there's like moss, right? There's like moss texture and like maybe like some like metallic texture and all that. When we will see another drawing of the red girl, yeah, Kuro, right? Unfortunately, not in this scene, but maybe in the future I'd like to draw more of her, like Kura's character. Yeah. Okay, so backgrounds, you still need light and shadow. What's in light, what's in shadow. I like to still add cast shadows. As you can see, this is like obviously the building, like the light from the sunlight can't get inside this building hallway. But generally, principles are absolutely the same. Main difference is maybe you'll be adding less details in the background. I definitely like to keep it less detailed. And my line art is definitely not as strong for the background. And there's probably a lot more textures going on. How do you balance importance with distance and size when drawing details? Distance and size. So what's closer is probably bigger. I think that's quite obvious. And things that are further away is probably harder to see the details. So like there's absolutely no point of trying to render this back building with like a lot of details, because first of all, like no one's like in real, like you won't technically see that much details in it because it's being pushed back, especially with that atmospheric perspective we talked about earlier. Okay, and all right, one more thing I want to talk about is that I draw line art for the characters, but with my backgrounds, my line art is actually, I just bring it from the rough. So let's see, where was this? My line art for the background is I just bring it from the rough. It's actually a sketch, and maybe I'll clean it up a bit if it's really messy. But it's basically I'm bringing this over and I reduce the transparency bit so it's not too strong because I don't want it to compete with the characters. So I don't draw separate line art for the background actually. I just draw it for the characters. So line art is just this. Okay, and then once the background is rendered, I then add in finishing touches. The main thing is that with finishing touches, it's contrast control, I feel, is the most important thing you want to worry about when you're finishing up an illustration. Because as you can see here, there's I made quite some adjustments with the contrast. You can see here. And what I mean by that is that you want to make sure your lights are light enough and your darks are dark enough. Because what happens is, if you don't have enough contrast, everything kind of looks pale and the same. Though some art styles do use a pale color palette inherently, it's just their style where it's like more pale, so it's more, there's less contrast, so it can depend on your art style. But generally speaking, you do want to have enough separation between light and dark, because it makes for a better state. It makes for better visual appeal. And also, when you like see it zoomed out, it's just more appealing, because like it feels grayed out if you don't have it. So as you can see here, it's quite grayed out. And then making sure like the darks are darker and the lights are lighter, it adds more of that, I guess, contrast. It's like it pops out more. So yeah. And also with finishing touches, I think I'm also adding like the minor details. Those always go last. So it's like, you know, like birds in the background, like these leaves being blurred, and yeah, all the fine details and like the polishing up, like particles. Oh yeah, and I also like to add these color contours. In the, I guess you call it, the official term is Terminator, but it's like light and dark. So yeah. So that's how I drew this illustration that I did for Sanrio's commission. And I hope it's useful, especially for perhaps beginner and intermediate artists, to see what are the steps and the process of making a professional illustration for like a major client. I hope that's useful for reference. Yeah. Maybe I'll see if you have any questions, I'll see if there's anything I can answer quickly. But yeah, if you have questions about the illustration or the process, like that's on topic, you can put them in chat and maybe I'll answer a few if you have any that you want to ask. Or perhaps the explanation was good enough. Where do you get references? I just searched online, really. For this one, I'll show you. We'll actually take a look at their theme park because this is a real stage in a real world in their theme park. Basically, I just use that as reference. So it's a lot easier to draw when you have reference. So yeah, it was actually very helpful that they asked me to draw something that exists, because if it doesn't exist, then I'd also have to think up the design and plan that out ahead. How do you know if it blends with the background or the color is right? Good question. So, main thing about making the color blend together is making sure the environment light is being shared. So let's see. In this case, as we talked about, the environment light is coming from the blue dome of the sky. That means the environment lights should be cool. Not necessarily blue, like completely blue, but shifting towards blue. So shifting towards blue here. Like a cool shadows. So shadows should be technically cool. And as you can see, it's like maintained here, everywhere. Whoop. Scream, don't die on me. Okay, so shadow of the pillars, cool. Everything here, even the mushroom, cool. Characters, cool. Building, cool. Everything cool. If for example, like something became like absolutely red, then it would no longer be part of the same scene because it's like using a different. The color logic isn't the same for everything, right? You want to make sure the scene contains the same color logic generally across it. Now this is stylized. This is stylized out, right? So not every rule has to be followed because you're not trying to draw absolute real life. But for example, with the skin, it's generally in real life it definitely won't be this warm, but it's like a feature of stylized art essentially. You want to make it like vibrant, so it feels warm and the character's alive and all that. So yeah, so the biggest tip is to make sure like the color logic stays the same for both your characters and the background. Okay. So let's actually take a look. That's a good question. So let's take a look at what their theme park looks like. So we'll be moving over to their virtual theme park right here. So this is in VR chat. It's really cool. It's really awesome. And they're finally celebrating their grand opening. So this is virtual reality, but you don't need VR goggles. You can do it in your computer. Let me just set up this. Give me a second. Let me know if the audio is okay. I know there's background music. I hope the background music is playing. But basically, you can, if you just log in VR chat, you can actually see like a portal going on because they have the virtual festival happening right now. And let's take a look at it. So I thought it was actually really cool. So it's called the Virtual Puroland, and it's an ever-evolving VR theme park. And like as mentioned, you see it going through VR chat, and it's open. The concept is that it's a VR virtual theme park that's open 24/7, so 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and you can access it anywhere in the world, and also be with other people. When you actually log in, you'll see like other people's avatar characters, but I had them hidden right now. And their concept of the theme park is to kind of put together a new place for, I guess it's like putting together a place for new forms of entertainment in what they call extended reality. And you can kind of immerse yourself in the worlds of like the Sanrio characters and indie creators, and also IPs from other companies and like their official content. And there's they'll also be expanding like user-generated content, and which will enable users and creators the opportunity to create and express themselves in this new space. So they have like this Sanrio V Fest going on, right? And as you can see, there's like not just there's also like other companies and official IPs, so it's pretty cool. Like here that you can check out. It's like timetables, and you can see what's happening. I'll cover. We'll go through what's like what are the cool shows going on actually a bit later on, because there's actually some really major cool like performers and IPs in here. It's really cool. And yeah, so it's a place where official IPs, companies, creators, and their fans and users can come together and interact. So the park will always be expanding new ways for fans to communicate with characters in this digital space, and they'll be starting with digital items and like their distribution. And so the way you can interact is you just go in these portals, right? It's just Sanrio Puroland, yeah. It's Sanrio Puroland. And this is the world of the illustration. So it's a virtual Puro village. And this is the Tree of Wisdom. So let's actually take a look at what's inside. There's English and Japanese. So you don't have to understand Japanese to enjoy it. And they also have, for like their timetable schedules, it's also, there's like an English one as well, for people in the States, I think, like in CST time. Because I know it's like, it's kind of like opposite Japan time and like US time. So this is the world, this is the illustration. So this was like the ruin thing that I drew. And then this was the thing that Aaron Ori was leading up to. And yeah. And with the question before, with the reference, yeah, basically in my case, I was able to use this as reference because that's what I asked me to draw. But typically I use it, I find references online. And it's really cool. You can kind of like walk in, explore, especially if you like Sanrio characters, you'll really love it. And the main thing is that they have shows, right? So in this VR world, the main thing is, depending on the time, they'll have like a show in this world. So right now, I don't think there's any shows happening in this timetable, so we're free to explore. But yeah, it's really nice. And actually for like artists, 3D environments like this is actually really useful, can become really useful like reference for drawing. Because it's like, you know, like it's also like virtual and you can kind of like practice drawing stuff. It's actually really nice as well. But yeah, with the world, really exciting. They'll have shows that you can enter, and let's actually take a look at that. So this is in VR chat. So it's VR. Technically, you can download it on many places. I think Steam would be the most popular one for you guys watching this. You can get it on Steam for free. It's called VR chat, and there's also a link in the description that you can check later on. So let me just show you other things first, and we'll talk about how to try it out. So they also do like other, so let's see. There's this thing I wanted to show you guys. It's really cool. So they're doing this like, they're adding their own lore, which I thought was really cool. Where is it? Let me just try to figure out where it is. Here we go. So it's called 8 Puronicles. So to commemorate the grand opening of the virtual Sanrio Puroland, Sanrio has launched their next generation VR IP project. And it's called 8 Puronicles, and it's where from the real world to the virtual, after 35 years, the legend of the Puro is reborn in virtual Sanrio Puroland. And there's eight stories of encounters and reunions that will be told as these 8 Puronicles. And currently two of the 8 stories have been released. And the people working on this are just absolutely amazing. So the music is provided by Sho Watanabe, who's known for writing and composing Connect from Puella Magi Madoka Magica. I think some of you guys might know it. It's a very, very famous anime, like absolute banger anime. And also he composed Oath Sign from Fate Zero and Crossing Field from Sword Art Online. So absolutely legendary composer working on this project. And these 2 stories are directed by Kinu and Yakusoku. And this protagonist in the Imagine Your Starlight arc is voiced by Yuki Kaji, who is the voice of Eren from Attack on Titan. And the protagonist of this other story in the Own Your Voice arc is voiced by Yo Mekata. So they're still working on this on their own IP here, which is really cool. And you can check for the latest updates. You can check their official 8 Chronicles website. So it's 8 Chronicles if you want to check out more of that. And I also wanted to share that what's happening in the virtual festival. So they have this virtual festival happening right now. And it's like crazy. So they have, for example, they have like Kiz and I performing there. And I think there's meant to be a pop-up here. Here you go. So, and you can see like the timetables, right? I think this is the English times, but you can check the official website in the description. You want to check this out if you're interested. But yeah, Kiz and I is going to have a show there, and it's in VR. It's really cool. It's like absolutely immersive performance. And also, there's also like Raden from HoloLive. You know her? And another one I wanted to highlight is this, the SOS Brigade from the Tsuzumi Haruhi series. This is it's an anime from a while back, but if you know this, you know it. It's like one of the iconic anime, like one of the most biggest, like, you know, like one of the most well-known anime, I hope. I don't know if people more recent, you know, if the younger folks, if you, the younger people watching this would know it, but if you're slightly older, you know this series, and it's very iconic, and this is exciting. Like, they're gonna have a show with the SS Brigade happening in the Virtual Puroland. And I think with their Virtual Puroland, there's like free shows and paid shows. So you'll have to take a look at, if you're interested, you can take a look at what's like happening there and the different shows happening. And yeah, you can check out the websites in the description as well. So like, yeah, there's like the parade calendar you can check. And again, that's all of it is in the description. You can check out below. There. Yeah, the melancholy of Suzumiya, of Haruhi Suzumiya. So yeah, I guess that's all that I wanted to share today in the stream. Thanks for joining. Yeah, it's like maybe you don't watch the anime, but you know, because it's just so famous. There. Thank you for joining. I hope you enjoyed the stream and found the illustration process and the tips useful. It was fun to do a stream like this since it's been absolutely forever since I streamed with you guys. And yeah, thanks for joining the chat as well. And sorry for the for the OBS troubles early on, but glad that seems to be fixed by now. And yeah, that's all. So make sure to check out the links in the description if you find that interested. If you find those interesting, like there's quite interesting shows. It's actually really exciting to see like a virtual theme park. And they also have like, you know, like famous VTubers and like anime IPs and all that, like official companies like doing shows and all that. That's actually really cool. And like you can see in VR. Like, so I thought that's just really exciting what they're doing. But yeah, thanks for joining. I hope you found it useful and I hope you enjoyed the stream. And I'll catch you guys later. Bye-bye.